This is the Asia Hollywood Greenlight podcast, episode number 51.
And rolling sound, quiet.
Here we go. Ready.
Speeding. 120, take 7.
And action.
This is Caryn McCann, the host of the Asia Hollywood Greenlight podcast, a podcast about creating and distributing content for both Hollywood and Asia. To show your support, please subscribe, leave a rating, or share this podcast on social media. The more we grow the community, the more opportunities we can create. Before I introduce today's guest, I'd like to start out with a motivational quote to encourage our listeners to continue on their path to achieving their own green light. And today's quote is from Mahatma Gandhi, who said, "Be the change that you wish to see in the world." A quick update on what I'm working on. The director I was hoping to attract has signed a letter of interest, and I also have a martial arts star who has also signed a letter of interest on 2 scripts. And these are called Revenge of the Hungry Ghost and The Magic Bookshop. Both of these scripts can be downloaded on the Asia list at www.chnlist.com. I'm also beginning to set up meetings at the AFM. And for the first time, I entered a pitch contest in Asia. So lots of things are happening over the next few months. And now here is the main segment. Today's guest is Conrad Sun, who is a talent manager for Meridian Artists. Conrad Sun joined Meridian Artists in 2014 as an associate. Based in Los Angeles, Conrad devotes his efforts towards building the Los Angeles roster and supporting all of Meridian's LA-based clients for both staffing and development. Additionally, Conrad works with the Toronto office to develop properties for the U.S. market and prepare clients who plan to work in Los Angeles. As a literary manager, Conrad is dedicated to working with screenwriters to develop material and bring to market for both staffing and development. Notable credits for some of his clients include Pen 15, SWAT, Westworld, Gossip Girl, The Boys, 2 Broke Girls, The Connors, Blind Spot, The Resident, The Last OG, Fuller House, and American Auto. Well, Conrad, that is quite a list. And first of all, thank you for coming on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Great. Now, I told the audience a little bit about you. Why don't you take a minute and tell us about yourself personally and your business?
Sure. I'm originally from Canada, I bounced around from different careers while I was up there. I was a biology major and a geneticist at one point, and that was not for me. One day at like 2 a.m. in the lab, while staring at a petri dish, I was just like, "This is not for me." So I naively thought that if I got into videography, it would foray into just being a filmmaker, which technically it should, but really what happened was, to keep the lights on, I ended up becoming a wedding videographer. And it was a great job. It just wasn't for me, again, because basically in Canada, your summers are very short. And if you are a wedding videographer, you're basically working all summer. And that just, again, it wasn't for me. All that is to say, I went from there. I moved to LA back in 2009. I did the Peter Stark producing program at USC. And then from there, I did a bunch of internships and ended up working as an assistant at a management company. From there, just found my way to different development jobs. And then I heard that Meridian Artists, which is a Canadian company, was looking for someone to head up their literary division. And just in the job description, they just happened to be looking for a Canadian living in LA, preferably. So I had all the different it was like everything they listed on there was basically describing me as a person. So I hit him up and said, "Look no further, I'm your guy." And I've been with him since 2014 and officially became a literary manager a year after that. And I've been loving it ever since. And from there, I've just been working with writers and directors in both feature film and television. And that's where I feel like is the best place for me anyways. It's like the perfect bridge in the industry between creative and business, because I love both sides of entertainment, and managers fit right in between there. And it's a great place for me, anyways. That I get to manage both sides. So that's basically me in a nutshell.
And is it the reason is Meridian wanted someone with a Canadian visa or passport is because they've got the office in Toronto and you could go back and forth?
I think mainly because they wanted someone that kind of understood both markets. And I think just like from a pride perspective too, like it'd be cool to have a Canadian as well, work for a Canadian company and be in LA. And it wasn't a requirement. It was more of like would be nice. It would be nice if this person was Canadian, but not a prerequisite. So it kind of just worked out that way for both parties.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, let me start with this question. I was reading about you, and I read that in the past you have been, among many accomplishments, you've also been a speaker at CAPE events, CAPE, Coalition of Asian Pacifics in Entertainment, which falls into my first question, which is why do you want to expand the Asian market or content with Asian themes or writers?
I've been working with Kate for a while. They're a great organization, and they are great in just representing all writers and just creatives from all different parts of I guess the Asian community. But for me, I believe that Asians have really great stories to tell, and it's not a matter of us feeling that our stories are better or need to be told more than others. It's we just have great stories, and people keep saying like we want great stories, great characters, and there's an ample amount that is represented by the Asian community and the Asian creators that just get overlooked. And then when people give it a chance and look at them, they realize, oh, not only are there great characters and great stories to be told, but you can also make money from it too. There's a financial gain that people always, look past as well. We work in Hollywood. It's a very money-driven industry. And so a lot of times people use the excuse for passing on projects, whether it's Asian or not, in the fact that there's just no commercialism in it. But we've only started recently to realize that there are lots of opportunities, not only for people to be entertained, but for people to make money just by telling Asian stories. So why not? But for me, I just feel like there's just a lot of untold stories and characters that have yet to be seen on screen, deserve to be seen on screen, and I think people will enjoy it. So why not give the audiences what they want?
Exactly. And just from a commercial point of view, Asia is such a huge market.
Exactly.
And, these TV shows movies, whatever, would travel further. And the really hot market right now, I understand, is Southeast Asia. So, we've got all the streamers that have opened up offices in Singapore and India, and it's a booming market. So, yeah, now is the perfect time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been proven time and time again, in the past 5 years, one of the biggest rom-coms was Crazy Rich Asians. And then the most streamed TV show on Netflix was a Korean show. And it's just like the proof is right there. And then, you get popular movies winning the Academy Award like Parasite.
Exactly.
So it's proven, right? And so why not capitalize on that?
So now for the audience who might be a little bit new to screenwriting, what are 2 or 3 main tasks you do on a typical day? Now, this, I should say, screenwriting or just people who are looking for representation, either between an agent or a manager. Maybe you could kind of clarify that.
Between agents and managers?
Right. And the typical main tasks you would do on a typical day.
Sure. At the end of the day, agents and managers, the end goal is the same. The end goal is to procure work for their client and to help sell their projects and find success in helping them create their projects. So that's the end goal. And that's all the same. The methods and the resources are different between the two. A very common analogy that people often use to sort of distinguish between agents and managers is if the screenwriter or the artist is the company. The manager is like the CEO or the COO, and the agent is like the chief of marketing or chief of sales. And so that's just a typical analogy that I hear all the time. But really, what it is the agents are responsible for acquiring information and intel about the industry, and then using that information to find opportunities. Managers do the same thing, but they don't have as big an outreach and resources as an agency. But they are definitely more hands-on and spend more time with the client to actually do the management that is required beyond just finding jobs. There's a lot of actual management with day-to-day with all the different artists, and so that we can let the artists just worry about creating and being creative themselves, and we take care of everything else. So that's the main difference there. And in terms of my day-to-day, what I love about my job is that every day is different, and every day I'm dealing with a different thing. And so, like today, I am in the middle of negotiating 2 deals while also taking out one of our clients' new scripts that she wrote last week, and trying to get traction there, while also dealing with administrative work that involves getting a client's checks in on time. So it's like I'm just a mishmash of everything, and every day is different, which is what I love about it.
When you are looking for these clients, not clients, but companies to send these scripts to, does the management companies use specialized tools like more than just Variety and the Hollywood Reporter, some kind of paid service to find these leads, or is it just nose to the grindstone, or just connections?
It's nose to the grindstone, and it's previous connections. That's really what our value is, right? It's not just because anybody can look up Variety and Hollywood Reporter and pick up a phone, but we have the relationships and we have the connections to them to have them read and have them be excited about what we send to them, right? Because our reputation's on the line, and our track record's on the line too. And so it is in our best interest to continually send good projects to them, send good writers to them. And when we keep doing that, we continue to build on that relationship. And so that's really what having any representation is there for, is that people prefer and like to be connecting and engaging with the agents and the managers themselves because of that pre-existing relationship.
Right. And are you teaching these clients how to pitch, or are you polishing their pitch, or how does that work?
Sure. I don't know if the teaching is the right word. I mean, they do have a sense of how to do it. We definitely offer guidance and notes and advice on how to better their pitch. I certainly have lots of philosophies on how, because pitching is a very nuanced and not black and white art form. And I obviously have my own philosophies on what I think helps a pitch get sold. But that being said, like, writers range in terms of how much guidance and teaching and notes they would require for their pitch or their script in order to get it out to market. And it's really what the client wants. If a client wants that feedback and that guidance and that handholding, we would love to do that, and we are a part of that. But sometimes they don't need it and they're good on their own, and then we just set up the meetings and they knock it out of the park. So every client's different.
And speaking of clients, how do you find your clients, and how do you find producers who are keen on content with Asian elements?
Sure. I mean, for me, a lot of it is just pounding the pavement and looking for people that are maybe flying under the radar and not getting the attention they deserve. And so I love to pay attention to winners of screenwriting competitions. I love to just hear about writers through CAPE. CAPE has a program where they accept and they work with writers to better their craft. And I like to pay attention to the writers that are coming out of that program. And then a lot of it too is that I tell screenwriters it is word of mouth. And that's the beauty of this industry, is it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. If your screenplay is amazing and exceptional, it will travel. That's just the name of the game. And what I tell screenwriters, especially up and coming screenwriters, is you have to kind of be humble enough to realize that if your script isn't being sent out and isn't being traveled, then it's not good enough. And that's okay. We have professional screenwriters whose scripts don't really hit the mark, and that's totally okay. And then you just go back and you either work on that script to make it better, or you write the next one. But I've seen it too many times, both from my clients and from other writers. If you write something amazing, that's exceptional. And that's the thing, it has to be exceptional, because these people in the industry, they read hundreds of scripts, if not thousands of scripts a year. So they've seen everything. And so your job is to impress them with something they've never seen before, execution wise. And when they do it, they'll either want to attach and do something with it, or they'll send it to somebody else. That's just the sort of the unwritten law of the land. And so again, I emphasize to writers, if you write something amazing, it will travel and people will get noticed. And I'm on the receiving end of that too. Like if I hear about, if a script is amazing, chances are I'll hear about it and it'll come across my desk, or people, within the company or within the industry will be talking about it, and that's what you want. And that's totally possible. And that happens all the time.
That's good to hear. Now, you mentioned screenwriting contests. Are there a handful or so that you recommend?
There's one in particular that I typically pay most attention to, and that's the Austin Screenwriting Competition. And the reason why, and this was definitely pre-pandemic that I paid more attention to, but the reason why I love this competition is they publish all the winners and the finalists and semifinalists in this document that I'm able to learn about and read about. But they host a film festival, the Austin Film Festival, in conjunction with the writing competition. And so I like to go to that competition along with all the different producers and screenwriters, A-list producers and screenwriters in Hollywood. They all go to Austin because they are Austin Film Festival has this magical way of getting these A-listers to go and speak on panels. So what it is you're there in Austin and you have A-list writers hanging out, and you've got the contest winners and the finalists hanging out all under one roof, and you're right there. And if someone's script is amazing, or if someone's script wins, or if someone's script is just getting a lot of traction, everybody talks about it and everyone hears about it and everyone's right there. And so we've actually signed a couple of very successful clients just by being in Austin and just finding writers there. So that's one definite competition that I recommend to screenwriters for sure.
Good. That's good. It's good to hear that. And I don't know if Austin is still online or if they're going to be in person, but I've always heard great things about Austin. Now, the opposite of great things. What obstacle did you encounter on a past project? How did you overcome it, and what did you learn?
Well, one of the biggest obstacles is definitely trying to find the right partner. And when you don't find the right partner, it's really hard to backtrack on. And so I think when working, I would say to screenwriters, if you find someone who's really passionate about your project, just take the time to really know if they're the right partner for you. And it's kind of like dating in a sense, where you kind of know it when you see it. You can feel it if they're a good collaborator. And if they are, that's great. If they're not, you can find another person that will be great for you, because later on down the road, if they're not the best person for you, then it sort of stifles your ability to get the project going. I think one of the things, just to talk about a separate project that just came to mind, aside from finding the best producing partner, one of the things I sort of learned recently is, there's a lot of negotiating in this business. There's a lot of business element to this business. And what I think people forget is that that people can be very empathetic to a deal or to a writer while in the middle of negotiation. And a lot of times we email back and forth terms and counters. And a lot of times I find it just more successful to just, instead of going back and forth with just a number and a rebuttal or a counter, I just prefer to get on the phone and just have a conversation and say, let's not go back and forth here. This is genuinely the number I'm trying to get to. And I'm being totally honest. I'm not trying to low or highball you either way. I'm trying to get to this number here. What can we do to get to this number? And I'm just being real with them, as opposed to 5 emails later, we all realize what number we're trying to get to. Or other times when I'm not getting what I want for the client, it's instead of just countering and saying, we want this and consistently repeating what we want, I'll just call the person I'm negotiating with and just explain to them and be real with them. Like, this is why I strongly believe the client deserves this. And I find it way more successful that way. And the people I'm negotiating with have responded in ways that they wish that more people would be more conversive about it. And so I feel like that's a new thing that I've sort of realized in the past couple of years. It's just like, people would rather just be honest and be real with them and just have a conversation. And then I think you just find better success that way.
Is some of the negotiation taken care of through the WGA? They have this standard rates that the studio, assuming this is a union job, the studio would have to pay at least the minimum on those rates. Yep, absolutely. That's the starting point. They always start at the minimum. But of course, just like any other job, if this is your 10th job, you expect to be paid more than just the minimum in any industry. And so it's all about, it always starts at the minimum and you got to work your way up. Okay. Now, if you could magically solve 2 current problems, what would they be?
Oh, that's a good question. If I could magically solve, this is a great question that I was supposed to be prepared for. And because there's so many things. Go
ahead.
I wish it would only take 1 week for people to read your scripts you submit them to. And this is not an exaggeration, I probably spend half my day following up. Like, it's my job to follow up. If I got a dime for every time I typed the phrase "just following up" in an email every day, I would be a millionaire. So I just wish that people would just, and some people are really quick readers, and other times it's just like pulling teeth to try and get them to read. So that's one thing I wish we could magically fix. And what's another one? I would say, I wish that, well, I'll leave it at this for this podcast. I wish there was more balance of Asian content compared to other content out there. I'm not saying we need to be more or less. I just want there to be a balance, because I think other communities, the Black community, the Latin community, the Indian community, the Indigenous community, we all have our own very unique and important stories to tell, and I just want a balance of it all. So that's in the spirit of this podcast. That's one thing I really wish there were better of.
Okay. Now you mentioned you do a lot of follow-up. Do you just use a spreadsheet, or is there some special CRM, customer relations management software that you use?
It's just my Outlook. I have a system there where I just set reminders and set delayed deliveries to just remind me, follow up with this person, follow up with that person. So yeah, it's pretty primitive.
Yeah, well, that goes. Writers have to do that too, as you well know. They have to. Yep. Keep track, because all these producers are getting, I don't know if I should say bombarded with scripts, but getting people to read your script and get back to you is always a challenge.
Yeah.
Now, what sort of future projects or clients are you looking for? And what do you think American or Asian producers are looking for?
I mean, for me, obviously, the bare minimum is great writing and a good person, right? That kind of goes without saying. But for me, aside from that, if you're a great person and you're a great writer, what I look for to stand out or really tip the scales for me to want to work with a writer is I want to get a sense that they just think differently. That like if they present me with the story or an idea, or I present them with the story or an idea, and I already have just sort of subconsciously, I already have an idea of how I would execute that story or execute that character. And if that writer comes up with a way to execute that story and character in a way that I would have never thought of, or if they come up with an idea for a premise, that I would have never thought of, that's kind of where I get excited. Or like there's a scene where they need to accomplish this thing in the scene, and they chose to do it this way that I would have never thought to do it this way. Like that's what I get excited about, is you just think differently, and when you bring what you bring to the table is a creativity that is very unique to you, and that again most people just wouldn't think the way you think. So that's what I look for, and producers are looking for the same thing, right? Decision makers are looking for the same thing. Is they've seen everything, they've read everything, and so then people feel hopeless, being like, well, how do I impress them? And the way you do it is, yes, they've seen everything, yes, they've heard everything, but it's the way you choose to execute that idea or that story that's supposed to stand out. And if you're able to do it in a way that they weren't able to think of, or they thought was very unique, then you'll impress them. And so that's what I really challenge writers to do, is that you're there to show that I am more creative and I can think differently than your average screenwriter. And that's what I look for.
When you have a writer client, for example, do you have like a standard number of scripts you want them to write a year, or a number of ideas to come up with a week or a month?
Not necessarily. It's really dependent on their schedule. It's really dependent on what their goals are. But what I will often tell writers is you should always be creating. You should always be writing. And writing doesn't mean like fingers to the keyboard and typing all the time. Writing doesn't mean, pen to paper all the time. Writing can simply mean research. Writing can simply mean jotting down ideas or brainstorming. That's all writing. So I definitely, I shouldn't even need to tell writers to write, because otherwise they wouldn't be writers. Writers just want to and obsess over writing all the time. And in terms of requirements, in terms of quantity, like I was saying earlier, it depends on their schedule. It depends on what they're working on at the time, and it depends on the type of material they write too. But I will tell writers this: a lot of times they think, they need to have as much in their library as possible to cover all opportunities, and just to have samples that meet different criteria, just so they have them. And what I will tell writers is, yes, absolutely, you should always be writing. You should have as much in your library as you can, but it only takes one script. It only takes one script to tip the scales. It only takes one script to find success. And that writing script makes the biggest difference. I tell writers this all the time, is when a writer gets a job, it's because someone read them, loved what they read, and met with them and wanted to work with them. No one ever lost a job because they read something great and then they wanted to read something else great and it just wasn't there. It only takes us one script and to really make it happen. And I've seen it happen so many times. We have a client who has been working for 10 years she keeps writing, but we still use the same script from 10 years. We call it the $1 million script. And not because we sold it for $1 million, but it's literally gotten her $1 million worth of work because it just works every time. And so I've coined the term Hotel California. Every writer should have their Hotel California. It's not a one-hit wonder. It is a script it is a song that just works every time. Like the Eagles have a lot of hits, but when you go to an Eagles concert, there's the one song that works every time. And that's what you got to do with your scripts.
I love it. And, that's very encouraging that you say it only takes one script. It is so true because, first of all, the, dare I say, the architecture of a TV movie or a film, it's like a startup. Each one is a startup. So really, it's not like you're guaranteed this movie, you did that, so we're going to take your next one. No, each one is a standalone.
Exactly.
But the positive side, the other side of the coin, which you said so eloquently, is that it only takes one.
It only takes one.
Yeah, that's very. It makes us all have hope. Now, here's a trick question. What question did I not ask you that I should have?
Oh, that's a good one. Because I obviously I work with screenwriters for most of my time. I think, and I won't put it on you, but I feel like I'll put this on general screenwriters when I sit on a panel is when I sit on a panel or when I'm being asked questions, and because I'm a manager, people always ask like industry questions, right? And, how do I get a manager, or how do I sell a script, or how do I get into here, or how do I find an agent or whatever, right? It's very industry questions. And those are all good questions. But then the answer usually comes down to, you have to have a great sample, or like I was answering previously, it's like, it only takes one. It all comes down to the script, right? The script makes all the difference, right? And then after like 3 or 4 times of repeating that answer, then it all comes down to the sample. It all comes down to the script. It all comes down to making that one script work. Nobody really asks me a screenwriting question then, right? People keep asking like industry questions. And so I always, and again, I'm not putting this on you. I'm saying mostly like when I sit on panels, it's like after 5 times of me saying the answer is screenwriting, why hasn't anybody asked me a screenwriting question? What makes a great screenplay? And so I would say the answer to always be asking is, what makes a great screenplay, or what can I be doing to better my screenwriting, right? Or what's the most common reason for people to pass on a screenplay? Like those kind of things are the helpful questions to be asking, right? And so to then take that further then and to answer those questions is it comes down to what I was saying earlier is everybody has read everything, and everybody who they read scripts for a living, and your job is to show them that your way of executing the script is different, and it subverts expectations. And what I mean by that is I'm not saying you need to have twists and turns in your script, because not every story needs to have twists and turns. But as I was saying earlier, is when people start to get a sense of what the story is and what the character is, they automatically start to map out 2 steps ahead of where the story is going to go, and what's going to happen and how it's going to play out. And if you can do it in a way that is better and different from what a person would typically think of when they pick up your script, then you've won them over, right? And so I always tell writers, find that way to make yourself execute your stories differently, execute the ideas differently, and make your voice stand out differently, and your screenplay will do all the rest. So
that's one idea is, a lot of these Hollywood executives have read thousands of scripts that don't have an added element, an Asian element, or, those are stories that we haven't heard enough of.
Yeah, exactly.
So that could be one way among many to stand out.
Totally.
Is to incorporate more of those elements that not everyone sees every day.
Exactly. And I'll emphasize, it takes more than just like an Asian story. It's how you execute that Asian story in a way that they haven't thought of, or they they typically aren't thinking of. Even if it's the wrong way to think of an Asian story, your job is to show it in a way that they've never thought of before, or they never knew was true, and that's where I think a lot of Asian creators sort of have an advantage, is that you're able to bring things to market that is still very new and still very nascent when it comes to familiarity, right? And so you already have a leg up there, where if you tell an Asian story, chances are the chance of it already being known is much slimmer than, a typical story that is not based on Asian stories or characters.
Okay. Now, one extra question I wanted to throw in is, you mentioned Austin as a great ground. Is a great place to discover writers. I think there's a handful of screenwriting contests that some people mention, like the Nichols or something.
Yep.
There's two sides of this answer. One is, oh yes, screenwriting contests can really help your career. Another side is it's all, it's the same readers. You're wasting your time. Don't bother. You might do well in one and lousy in another, same script. So some writers will say, well, forget it. I'm going to spend my money and I'm going to make a radio play out of my TV pilot.
Yeah.
Or something very unique, or something visual, or something, at least podcast or something or YouTube radio play that could be setting themselves up. What do you say to that? That some of these screenwriting contests might be a waste.
Sure. I think really if it comes down to the budget, like you said, it does cost money to submit, and if that becomes an issue, then you got to basically treat your script like a business, right? You have this marketing budget. You want people to be exposed to your script. So if you have limited money in terms of how to do that, then you decide for yourself what's the best way to apply that money and get the best exposure for your script. Now, if that $30 submission fee for the Austin Film Composition Contest is not that much, then why wouldn't you do it? Because that's $30 where you're going to get read, and where your script is going to get exposure, and you'll also get an idea. Yes, there's people that read all the time, but the thing is, again, if your script is amazing, it'll stand out and people will recognize it. There's no control over whether or not you win, but you will see consistent results, and that'll be a sort of litmus test about your writing as well. But it's I look at it as free marketing, or not free marketing, affordable marketing for your script.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Now, if you could give advice to your younger self, what would it be?
If I would say, that's another great question. I would have actually just told myself to become a manager earlier.
Right.
Because, when you come down to Hollywood and you're sort of naive and green in terms of what you can do in Hollywood, if you had a list, a manager is usually not on that list, and I was not really aware of it. And it was kind of just, kind of fell in my lap kind of thing. I said, okay, I could produce, I could be a filmmaker, I could be a writer, but manager wasn't on the list. So I would just tell myself, hey, you should look into this thing, because it could be something that fits your strengths and your interests. And so that's all I would say, is that that's a part of the industry that oftentimes gets overlooked. People know about agents, people know about actors, writers, directors, producers, but the manager, they're not the ones getting thanked at the Emmy or the Oscars. They're not the ones that are really getting a lot of the spotlight, but yet they are a huge part of the business. And so that's what I would tell them.
Yeah. Now, in conclusion, would you like to share any social media details or website links?
I'm good, actually. I don't have any. I intentionally keep a fairly low profile online. Okay. But I think I rely on great word of mouth, both in incoming and outgoing, to just sort of spread the word. But no links to share.
Yeah, good, because sometimes you can go down the rabbit hole on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Conrad, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Great. This has been fun and very entertaining and very educational. And thank you again. And we'll see you at the premiere.
All right. Sounds good, Caryn. Talk to you later.
And now for my key points. Today I have 6. Number 1, managers versus agents. Although the end goal is the same, the methods are different. The end goal is to get work for your client. As Conrad described, it is the artist. The artist is like a company, and the manager is like the CEO or COO, and the agent is the chief of marketing or sales. Agents get intel on the industry to find opportunities to procure work for their client. Managers don't have as much resources or outreach as an agency. However, managers are more hands-on with their clients. Number 2, finding clients. CAPE is a good resource. CAPE is the Coalition of Asian Pacifics in Entertainment. They offer resources and advocate for more Asian-themed content and Asian writers. Conrad also says word of mouth is very helpful to finding clients. Number 3, how to get discovered. Very basic, but very key, write an exceptional script. It sounds so basic, but it's so true. If your script isn't getting traction, it means it's not good enough. But that's okay, as Conrad says. Even professional screenwriters don't always hit the mark. Either do more rewrites or start a new script. Number 4, contests. Are they worth it? Some writers believe contests are not worth the effort, or worse, a scam. Some complain that it's generally the same readers, or worse, some intern without much experience reading your script. Now, Conrad, on the other hand, believes as a writer you need to market your script. You need to set aside a budget to spend getting exposure for your script. He recommends the Austin Film Festival. The early bird deadline is usually in March, and and this year the price was $50. Is the money well spent? Only you can decide. Number 5, it only takes one. One exceptional script could launch a writer's career. Conrad told the story of his client's $1 million screenplay. She wrote it years ago, but he still uses it as a sample. He says that one script has gotten her over $1 million in writing fees over the years. So you never know. Maybe your next script could be the one that launches your career. Number 6, how to impress producers. Execute your script with a unique vision. That doesn't necessarily mean throwing in a bunch of twists and turns. Producers read hundreds, if not thousands, of scripts a year. So to stand out, your take on a character or story needs to have a unique voice. Well, that's the show. Producers, managers, agents, and creative execs, you can find Asian-themed content and writers on the Asia list. Your membership is free. Writers, sign up for the Asia list to get more exposure for your work. Sign up at https://chnlist.com. Thanks again for listening. I appreciate your support. Please help us out by rating the show and sharing it on your social channels. And leave a comment if you think script contests are worth the money or not. If you've had success with one, please let us know in the comments. And I'll see you at the premiere. Bye.